Welcome to the Universal Dancer podcast with your host Leslie Zehr, author of The Alchemy of Dance and the Alchemia Remedies. Coming to you from Cairo, Egypt, the ancient land of Chem. Journey with us to explore sacred dance, the sacred arts, the mystical and the magical. Join a community of like-minded souls seeking to understand the cosmic dance of co-creation through the sacred arts. Come along and expand your mind, ignite your creativity, and explore something new and something old. Welcome to the Universal Dancer podcast. I'm Leslie Zehr, your host, and this is episode 22. And my guest today is Sofiah Thom. Sofiah Thom is a modern-day temple dancer and divine feminine embodiment mentor for creative women birthing a new paradigm. She has co-founded more than 3 different businesses, including Envision Festival, Danyasa Eco Retreat, and Temple Body Arts Mystery School of Living Tantra and Sacred Sensuality. Welcome, Sofiah. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Leslie.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate you taking the time, and I'm very interested to find out more about what you're doing and how you got to where you are. So maybe we can just begin by talking about how you got into dance. How did you first find sacred dance, if you call it sacred dance or conscious dance? Tell us a little bit about how it all began for you.
Absolutely. Well, I've always danced for as long. But yes, coming out of the womb, I think I was pretty much dancing, and so, as a child, as probably many of us young girls did ballet and had a dream of wanting to be a ballerina. And I was told, though, by my ballet teacher, that I could never be a ballerina because I had knock knees. Can you imagine as a little girl, like,
Yes,
getting this message?
I think a lot of us were told
Right?
horrible things at a young age. Yes,
I know. And just like that environment was it was so judgmental and not like the space to really dance and be free ultimately. And so that really, that definitely put me down, and I think kind of disconnected me in a lot of ways, until I remember finding my mom's friend started doing like a creative dance class when I was, in my like maybe 11 or 12, and like that was incredible. And I was like, okay, like I can dance. It doesn't have to be ballet and jazz and these ways that like I really just didn't connect to. And so, I'll say that my journey, gosh, it's such an interesting one because I mean, as I said, I've always danced. So I mean, even I grew up in a spiritual community as well. So I'm 4th generation in Subud, which is a spiritual community and organization that was founded in Indonesia. And it's a non-sect group, but it was founded by a Muslim. And I feel really its roots are in Sufism. And the, the practice that we do is very much surrendering our will to the will of the divine and allowing ourselves to be moved through movement and through sound. And so I grew up traveling all over the world, going to these Subud World Congresses, getting into all kinds of trouble. That's a whole nother story. And, going to watch the adults, like kind of looking through and watching them all be in their practice and just be so mesmerized by that. And at these congresses, I would actually put together dance performances, because it was like I had this audience and we could just kind of have these talent shows. So I was always dancing. And I would say that really it was when I was 15 that I was I was at a underage dance club. I was living in Portland, Oregon, so my family immigrated to Oregon when I was 14. And I was at this underage dance club dancing, and somebody came up to me and they were like, do you want to come? Do you want to be a go-go dancer for this rave? And I was like, what is this? And basically I ended up skipping school on Halloween, going to this rave when I was like 15 and being a go-go dancer. That was the portal into exploring dance at raves, really, back in we're talking about the early 90s here. And so, yeah, that was really, I feel like, a saving grace for me in my teens, because I definitely struggled with, having, yeah, I had this awareness of like this inner knowing, this inner voice that was very strong in me from, growing up in the spiritual community that was very much like listening to our inner compass and that divine, what's aligned and with the divine. So I already had this awareness, but at the same time was very rebellious and like exploring. And, as a teenager, it can be pretty confusing. And so I feel like, when I discovered going to raves and being able to just fully go and like lose myself in the dance, like all night long, was just so incredible. And I feel like that's really where I found like, that trance like state of losing myself and finding myself all in the same breath. Yeah.
I think it's so important for teenagers to have some kind of a creative outlet. If they can, I think their rebellion can go into creating rather than being destructive, perhaps, that to put that energy into something creative. I grew up in a theater. My mother's an actress, so I grew up in the theater, and I think I was really blessed to have
Mm.
had that as an outlet, to have that creative outlet. And I saw that nobody else in school did. They would all go home and watch TV or do whatever you
Right.
did in the 70s. I don't
Yeah.
probably not the same things you do now, but I really felt blessed to have had that, and they carried on working with teenagers later when they were much older, and my nephew was in high school. And I think having some kind of a creative outlet for teenagers is just so
Mm.
important and can channel that energy. So yeah,
Absolutely.
that's great that you found that. Yes, yes. So when
Definitely.
did it move from, when do you feel that it kind of moved from dance, maybe being creative and expressing that energy? When do you feel that it kind of
Mm.
moved into sacred dance or conscious? What do you call it? Do you call it sacred dance or conscious dance? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I call it many things. I call it temple dance, sacred dance, conscious dance. Yeah, for me, it shifted into really when I was 16, then I ended up getting opened into Subud. So that's when I started doing the actual spiritual practice myself when I was in Colombia. And so from that time, I had this opening, this awareness within me. And so I feel like that kind of shifted it and really brought that awareness of connecting to the divine through my dance and recognizing there was no separation and being able to truly surrender. Because I see this parallel with, surrendering in our own spiritual practice. It's about surrendering our will to the will of the divine. And so I just bringing that into, to my dance, whether I'm going to dance at a rave, whatever it was. But then it was really when I was, I went to University of Oregon, like the early, in 1995, and I studied dance, and I got injured though. I actually, I'm doing all this dance, and I'm having to study ballet again, ballet and jazz and modern. And again, I'm like in this place and it's all about like how skinny you are and this competitive energy. And I was like, this is not what dance is for me. And I ended up hurting my Achilles tendon. It just went out one day. My Achilles went out. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. My Achilles. What is this about? And it really kind of woke me up and to seeing like, okay, this is not really the path of dance for me. Like there's something else. And at that point, I had had a deep experience of really recognizing that I was here as a healer. And I didn't know what that meant really or how that would look, but I knew that piece. And I knew that actually dance therapy existed, but I didn't even know what that was. But I just I knew, we're talking about 1997 here. Didn't have my own computer. I had to go to the library to go look up on the internet. And I just went and I looked up.
At least
dance
you had
therapy.
internet.
Right.
We didn't have
exactly.
internet. Yeah.
Yeah, so I went to the library and I looked up dance therapy and I found Naropa. At that point, it was Naropa Institute. Now it's a university. And I started reading about this dance therapy program and I just started crying. It was like my soul was like, yes, this is what you need to be doing. And so, so I ended up leaving and going to Naropa. Naropa is this beautiful Buddhist liberal arts school, if you don't know it, anyone listening in Boulder, Colorado, that has really grown since then. I mean, this was just an institute at that point in 1998. And now, it's grown into an incredible university and expanded. And so I got to go there and study dance therapy and interarts. And so that journey was incredible for really diving deep into seeing how dance was this healing modality. And everything was through the lens of contemplation, through this Buddhist lens, which I also really connected to. And then I ended up doing an internship to get credits with Melissa Michaels. And I believe she's been on here before.
Yes, she has.
So she was my first mentor. So I was 24 and she was my mentor. And we have some beautiful stories from back then. Yeah, we're still very connected. And so I went and I got to really kind of shadow her and see how she was putting together her whole surfing the creative kind of rites of passage work. And really dive deep into 5 rhythms as my kind of first like modality of understanding this bridge to the divine through our dance. And that was just such an incredible coming home moment and gave me the depth that I needed. Studying dance therapy, it was so much about the different populations of like working with different populations and very, very simple. And for me, I knew that I really wanted to work with people, normal neurotics like ourselves that needed support, and using dance as this way of really reconnecting to themselves, of moving energy, of shifting state, of, rewriting the stories held within them. I mean, now, we're looking at 20 years plus later. I've now, obviously developed all my work since then, but that was really like that huge starting point in 1998. Yeah, of really saying yes to this path in that way.
But you had a strong spiritual background as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and did you find it easy to sort of meld? Do you think that helped you a lot? Did that make
Oh,
it easy to
yes.
bring those two together? I would think so.
Absolutely, because it was already awoken within me, this connection to my own divinity from very, very young age. I think it was just
And
always there. So,
that concept of surrender,
mm-hmm.
because the word Islam means surrender. And that is what I found when I went to Egypt, was the first time that I encountered that concept of surrender. That wasn't something that was in my consciousness. And I really think that's why I needed to go. I needed to step out of Western society and step into a culture that their mindset was about surrender to what,
Yes.
to the divine, but also to the things that happen to you and all of that. And I find in my teaching that concept, which to me is what spirituality is about surrendering to whatever your path is or where you're going. I think that's very difficult for the Western mind, because we have been programmed from such a young age to control. In
Mm-hmm.
schools, we need to control the outcome.
Mm.
And it, for me personally, like with when I teach dance, that's been a really difficult concept to get across to people. And I think that dance lends itself to that, especially if it's a free form of dance, because you can just hear the music. And then I think it's a wonderful way to practice surrender. But I think that's not that easy for a lot of people. So
Oh
you
no.
coming from that background must have made it easier to step into that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, as I've gotten older and just looking back, I'm like, wow, I was so blessed to come into my family. I mean, they're also, my parents are healers also, and authors, and very much like in the human development, spiritual human development movement, back in the 80s and 90s. So I came in with an amazing head start. I recognize that. And that's why I'm going to be 46 this year. And I feel, yeah, I'm just on this mission. I just have this huge, amazing responsibility, I feel, to be able to just show up and, support others in this deep, deep remembrance of what is possible when we do surrender the mind, when we surrender the emotions, when we surrender the stories, the victim, and really come into this deep remembrance of ourselves as sovereign creators, here to truly co-create in each moment. And so, yes, this is what I give my life for. And I'm so blessed and honored, to have come in with so many resources to be able to really create such a powerful foundation for me.
And I think
Absolutely.
you're setting that example. I think we need people who walk the talk, who have lived that,
Mm.
who live that life of surrender. Because I think if it's a new concept for you, then intellectually we can adopt it. But to be around people who hold that energy of having lived their lives like that, I think that that's so important, to seed the world with those people who actually do that. Do you find from your, I mean, from your students and the feedback from your students, like, where is that difficult for them to do that surrender piece, or where are the blockages, I guess, is what I'm asking. Yeah.
Mm.
Or resistance.
Yeah, I mean, it takes time. This is what I see. Like, a lot of my clients and students have stayed with me now for multiple years, because it is like this spiral path. And we're constantly deepening in this remembrance, in this like coming home to the power that lives within us, and strengthening our ability to really catch ourselves, when we go into those self-limiting belief systems, or, the victim story, or, any of that is going to get in the way of us really creating the lives that we're here to create and live. And so the more that you deepen into these practices, because yeah, I've really, created through temple body arts, this modality of really, I've fused everything that I've really experienced and received and trained in my whole life to really like bring through in temple body arts. And it's these deep practices and ways of being and ways of seeing and ways of living that is, it's why I call it living tantra, because it's a living, breathing way of being that is so much about recognizing the body as an instrument of the divine, and always coming back to that. And so yes, like the practice that I teach, I don't necessarily, well, I do call it surrender, but it's also really just about emptying out. Also, it's like we just need to empty out because we take on so much other people's stuff and stories and all of this, and like just to be able to come back and to empty out again and again so that we can truly, fill ourselves with our essence, like to become full of ourselves, as I like to say, like in the most positive light, and to fill ourselves and to come from that place of fullness so that we can overflow with our essence, with our divine essence, and offer our gifts to the world. So yeah, there's all kinds of blocks, as people are learning how to get out of their own way. I mean, we are our biggest block is ourselves, getting in our own way, and our egos, and so yeah, it's a constant practice. And one of the biggest tools that I teach, that all of my clients have said is just probably one of the most powerful tools that they receive, is called the sword of discernment. And I really did receive this through my own spiritual practice, because through the Latihan, which is what we call a spiritual practice, it really taught me how to be able to listen and know what is truly aligned with my soul's purpose and mission and what is not. And this is only going to come through a deep listening and through this deep like trust also in ourselves. Like this is another key that is absolutely essential, is like really building that trust with ourselves and trust with life, trust with our own inner knowing, trust with what we're feeling is aligned, is a yes, and what is not aligned, and to be able to really come into our power, create boundaries, speak our no, so that we can truly live our yes, which is that, yes, being like in absolute alignment with our divine purpose and essence. So yeah, these are some of the pieces that I'm really weaving through.
And I think you made several good points, but two that I think are key are to get this depth. It does take time.
Yes.
It is a practice. That's why I call it dance as a spiritual practice, because it's something that you need to keep doing. We're peeling away the layers of the onion, and what you just mentioned about discernment. We have not been allowed to think for ourselves and to discern, so we've lost that. We've been made to believe that intuition is some kind of woo-woo thing, so we should, and it isn't. It's your guidance. It's your higher self. So I think it's important to realize that to have that depth, it does take time. You need to peel as it should, because
Yeah.
anything that happens too quickly is not real. It's going to be some kind of a shift, but it's not going to stick. It took a long time for us to program ourselves into things, and it will take time to remove those layers as well. So I think it's important going into a spiritual practice or transformation that you have the awareness that it takes time, and it should take time. This is, I had a center for 20 years in Cairo, and I finally closed the center, and one of the reasons was that it became like a chic thing. It was like shopping. Like, what workshop are you going to do this weekend? And that isn't it. For me, it's about depth. It's about how deep can you go, and the beauty of that. Yes, sometimes it isn't easy, but we need to remove those layers to get to our essence, and that takes time. So I think that's an interesting an important point to think about from the very beginning is that we have to relearn perhaps, or unlearn, not unlearn, but find new pathways to get to those deeper places so that we can really find our true essence, as you said. Yeah.
Yeah, I love what you shared too about, why you closed. And I feel like, yeah, a lot of people right now, we're just in such a different time. And it's like, they're just kind of like dabbling in and like doing all these different things, or like going to a weekend workshop, and all of a sudden, they're like trained to be able to do this kind of breath work, or rather
Very
than,
feminine.
right. Well, that's a whole nother story. We don't need to
Yes,
go
I
there.
know.
I live in Costa Rica, so
Yes,
there's a
and
lot of,
I was born in Peru, so I have a very
oh gosh.
I have a
Well,
very deep resistance.
yeah, the self-proclaimed. Right. So anyway, I think that it's so important though for us, for you, for anyone, tuning in, to really find a mentor, find, a modality that like really speaks to you, and then to commit. Like the path of devotion and commitment is really where we can create these new pathways. Like, and so I always speak about this because, with dance therapy, that's really what it is. It's about creating these new pathways so that we can move and think in new ways. And so to really be able to devote, that's how we can deepen these new grooves, these new moves. And like a river is formed with, a trickle at first. And then that trickle, like through repetition, becomes a stream. And then it actually starts to like move the rocks and like create a whole new pathway and river. And this is only from repetition. And so I think this is one thing that's kind of missing. It's just, we've lost really honoring our lineage, and really like deepening in and knowing where things are coming from, and why, and so yes, I'm all about this path of devotion and just deepening. And I see, those that have been with me for multiple years, like they have completely transformed, and to say the least, like, I mean, and those that come for 9 months also, like, of course you're going to completely transform, but it's like to really step into and embody, this deeper level of who we came here to be. And also to recognize, I think one thing that I love to create is a movement and community. And so to recognize that you are part of something bigger, and that, we don't have to do this alone. And so there's just so much power in also coming together and dancing together in order to really birth this new paradigm. It's like, we are awakening all over, which is why I love, this Universal Dancer podcast. And you're, getting to really share all of the beautiful humans around the globe that are bringing dance through, and, using dance to support the awakening of so many humans at this time, which is so, so needed and important.
And I think that's a huge aspect of the divine feminine, is this
Mm-hmm.
concept of community and holding space. And I think that we need that. We need that mother energy to hold space for our rebirth. So
Yes.
I don't think we should have the idea that we're going to read one book or take one class and then somehow all on our own over there, we're going to figure it all out and we're going to be changed, because I think
Mm.
that's, you're in a vacuum also. You need that interaction, and I really think you do need support. And I hope that this last 2 years that we've lived in have made people realize that. I hope that they have explored their inner space because they had to, maybe, but never mind, it gave them an opportunity to do that. And I hope that that also created some kind of way to realize what was lost also, and
Mm.
how we need that support other people. Yes, you can do it virtually to a certain extent, but let's look at all the different shades of what that means, and to really think about it, or experience it, or feel it, or really dive in to see what it is that we do actually need, and to find that support wherever we can. And as you mentioned, that's one of the points of this podcast, is just for people to have the opportunity to find someone who resonates with them, and that they can pursue some kind of a practice with. Yeah, they can try out everybody. Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
that's not a bad thing when you're trying to find someone, but I think once you connect to something, then it is really important to go deeper, to really commit to something. And you're committing to yourself in the end. Like, you're
Right.
committing to your own
Absolutely.
spiritual growth. And I think human beings are here to create. We're here to create ourselves, and to become our best self, to reach our
Mm-hmm.
potential, however you can do that. So
Yes.
tell us about Temple Body Arts. Tell us, what does
Mm.
that entail? How did it come about, and what does it include? Just
Mm.
dive
Yes.
in.
Well, from Naropa, I then ended up going. I had wanted to go to India and study temple dance since I was like 17. My mom was like, "You have to wait a little bit." So when I graduated from Naropa, I got to go to India. Went for 7 months and went on a journey to find my teacher for temple dance. It was not easy. It was a very, very hard initiation I went on. Ended up, though, like diving deep into Tantra yoga, and did find a school for Odissi dance that, yes, that was a whole story for sure. It was very, very oppressive situation that I was in, and I was like, what is that? This is not devotional temple dance. And I had this like 18-year-old boy trying to teach me this temple dance and these moves,
Yeah,
and he's
wow.
like yelling at me, and he's like, why can't you do these moves? And it was so disconnected from the divine for me. I was so confused. I was like, what is going on? And I was like the most disconnected from myself. But I knew, like, I was like, I can't leave until I know why I'm here, because I'd had this deep calling to go to India and study temple dance. And so every day I was doing my spiritual practice as a way to like remember myself and feel my essence, because it was one of the most difficult, oppressive situations, energetically. And then one day I went to do my practice, and I just started channeling this devotional temple dance. It just like started coming through me. And in that moment, it's like, my whole body just like came alive, this full activation. It was like, oh my God, this is why I'm here. Like, I remember being a temple dancer. This is why I'm here, to teach others their own devotional temple dance. We just have to remember. We just have to remember. And so in this moment, I was like, thank the goddess, I can leave. I know why I came. It's all within me already. And so, that pathway brought me, then I ended up back in England, and then I ended up dancing in this company with this man that had studied and danced with Anna Halpern, who birthed the Tamalpa Institute in Marin County. And so working with him in the expressive healing arts work in England ended up bringing me back to the States and to California, and to go and check out this Tamalpa Institute. So I had an interview there. And in the interview, she was telling me about the different studio spaces. She's like, well, we have the Mountain Home Studio, and then we have the Subud House. I was like, the Subud House? She's like, yes, that's where we we have our trainings there. I'm like, I grew up in Subud. And it was just this moment of like where, you know, my inner and my inner and outer worlds like came together. And I had been just praying, like, you know, on this deep search in my 20s, like, what am I even doing? I studied dance therapy and went to India, and I was back in England, and I was actually very depressed in England. I'm not supposed to be there. I left for a reason. Thank you, parents. And so, you know, just on this deep, deep search and like feeling this, you know, such depth within my inner world, but like, how do I bridge it with what I'm here to really do and create in the world? And so it was really this moment. And I just remember this moment so deeply when I went to the first workshop, and it was in the Subud house. And so we're in the kitchen, and there was like 2 cupboards, and one said Tamalpa students only, and the other one said Subud members only. And it was like, oh, I can open both cupboards. And it was just really this like symbolic moment of, yeah, like really finding my path. And so that was an incredible year journey of really mapping my entire body through the life art process and discovering the myths and stories held in my body, and creating this performance, like ritual performance at the end, to really, bring to understand, you know, who I am on a deeper level, and the stories I've been living by and with, and like what I'm here to create, and really powerful. And and so from there, you know, I started sharing and teaching dance. My first offering was called Embodied Grace, a playful and prayerful expression of the self through dance, in San Francisco. And and it was just this time of experimenting. You know, I was just really like experimenting and bringing through all these different pieces of the yoga I had studied in the Tantra, and and then with the life art process, and 5 rhythms, you know, and just like really experimenting and playing and finding my own path. And and then I met my husband. I ended up moving to Costa Rica, so 15 years ago, and he built this incredible studio for me. He's a builder, so that was definitely a big plus. So we built this beautiful studio, and I was like, okay, I can offer, you know, Embodied Grace. And nobody came. I mean, here I am all of a sudden in this tiny little beach town in Dominical, Costa Rica. There was really like no yoga or anything here, or consciousness. Like, it was like a party surf town back then. It has definitely shifted now. And so, I just started teaching yoga, and then people would come, and it was bamboo yoga. And so it was really like through the yoga and through my whole journey. I mean, it was like me trying to figure out how I could really bring through my gifts into the yoga. And so I started weaving in some of the expressive dance into the yoga, and like exploring, creating that. And that's really where the word danyasa came from. It was this fusion of like vinyasa and dance. And so that was my modality for a while, actually. And then kind of released that. And Danyasa Eco Retreat became, that took on that name. And then I was still like putting my like goddess embodiment and the Tantra and the different pieces into yoga teacher training. So I ended up birthing my own Danyasa yoga arts teacher training in 2012. We also birthed Envision Festival in 2011. And so, it was just, there was a lot of birthing happening for sure. And, you know, kind of exploring different ways of bringing my gifts through as a performer also, because I've also been performing and dancing, you know, for most of my life as well. And so bringing that through, and but was always this interesting piece with the yoga where it was like, okay, yes, I can do this and I can bring it into the yoga, but like that wasn't my first love. And so I felt like I'm like putting, you know, my gifts into this like box that like has to fit this certain way. And I was scared. Like I was scared to just like fully birth my own thing. was like, nobody's going to come, like, why are people going to come to something that they don't know, or like get credits from the school, and, all of that stuff there. And then, yeah, Temple Body had been kind of around. And at one point I was like, I had on my website, like, Temple Body Dance. I don't think I actually even did anything with it, but it was there. Like, I was feeling it, but I think maybe I wasn't ready and the world wasn't ready. And then it was really in 2016 when, there was so much going on. I was trying to get pregnant also. Like, I'd been trying to get pregnant for like almost 5 years. So that was happening, and wanting to expand at Danyasa and not knowing how, and just not, like, working so much but not really having enough money, like, ever, and just all these like pieces that just were not fun. It was just like this really kind of difficult time of being pulled in all these different directions, and had done so many different things and had all these different gifts, but didn't really know how to like channel them and bring them through. And it was really, when I finally got pregnant, actually. Finally got pregnant, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it, and I could like feel this baby like in my womb, and it was bringing me deeper into my womb in ways I'd never experienced. And then, but then I found out it wasn't viable, and I actually almost lost my life from this miscarriage. And it was through this experience and this initiation that, I just went into like the deepest place within myself, and like had to really move through the grief, and used all of the tools that I had to be able to transmute this, this loss and this dream that I'd had for so long into really actually birthing my school. Like, I just got this like download. It was like, you are here to be a spiritual midwife. It's time for you to fully release that dream and to put all of this energy into finally like birthing your school. And I already had the name. I mean, it was already here. The Temple Body Priestess had been knocking on my door and on my womb space. And I actually really feel that this spirit baby came to really light the fire within me. And, I had such a strong message come through that was just, even when I was pregnant, it was like, clear your entire schedule, and like, you have to birth your school. And so then, like, I thought that I was going to be pregnant during that, but then I lost it. And so I was able to just like shift all of that and just go for it. And I just felt like, okay, I have nothing to lose here. It's like, and so I just, I started. I remember I just had like 5 women come to the first one, and I just like channeled through the teachings, and we recorded everything. So then I could create the manual for the next one. And I just started like that, and it grew. And, so this was in 2017. And last year I had 50 women in my program, and actually had taken it completely online through the pandemic. And it's just been incredible to like really just stand in myself, as a spiritual midwife, as a temple dancer, Dakini, like really bringing this work through and supporting so many other women that, were longing to really connect with themselves and discover their gifts, and like really up leveling in their own way to really bring forth all that they're here to bring forth. So that's really how it all came to be.
It sounds like you were just ahead of your time.
Yeah.
I think that happens, and then we have to just sit and wait for the universe to catch up with whatever it is that we're doing. And it's an incubation period. So we're not sitting and waiting. We're doing things, but it sounds like your baby was the catalyst, and I guess she did what she needed to do. And didn't actually need to be here, or maybe she needs to be on the other side
Yeah.
for you to
Yeah.
connect with that.
I
Yeah.
feel, yeah. Yeah, they knew that they were never going to be here in flesh and bone. Yeah, and so it's been this powerful release, you know, and a choice, a sovereign choice to be like, because I could have kept trying to conceive, and I really, fully claimed myself and my path. And so that's been extremely powerful. And to really be able to just fully give myself to the work, to this path, and it constantly evolves. I mean, I'm going through a beautiful rebirth right now of, you know, just deeply listening. And now it's like, yeah, it wants to be the Temple Body Arts, yeah, mystery school, and really bringing forth the Dakini energy, that is me. Like, I just recognize that so strongly from, you know, even when I was a child. I mean, I was really quite obsessed with sacred sensuality and sexuality, and like was, you know, reading and looking at all of my parents' tantra books that were just on the shelf there, I remember, and just, yeah, this fascination with sexuality and dance. And so it just like, it makes so much sense. Like, it's always been there, this like deep fascination and like exploration. And so it's beautiful to be able to really recognize that. And, you know, and what I've come to, even because Temple Body Arts is there, but it's like over the last 5 years, I have learned what Temple Body Arts even really means. It's like it's revealing itself to me, you know. And what I recognize is that Temple Body Arts is these three channels, really. And so Temple is the spiritual channel, Body is the sexual sovereign channel, and Arts is the creative channel. And that it's through awakening these three channels that we can really remember why we came here and really access our divine power to be able to truly create the life that we're here to create. And so, it's so exciting because I feel like I'm like on this path, just constantly listening, you know, and evolving and growing with it. It's like, it's so much bigger than me. Like, I'm here as the vessel and the one to bring this forth. And it's just, yeah, it's so much surrender and trust every single day. And it, you know, it's beautiful to be able to just really live my life in this way and to keep showing up and, you know, listening and responding and shifting with it.
But I think it takes a long time to really be able to listen deeply, that you can bring something through that's that pure. I think it's a lot about clearing your own vessel and getting other things out of the way so that you can bring in whatever it is that you need to bring in.
Yeah. Yeah. My practice definitely has helped me in that. Absolutely.
So let's talk about the Dakini a bit, because I would like to hear how you came to this and what your thoughts are and how you would describe it. Just to give you my interest or how I
Please.
came upon this is, as I mentioned to you before we started, my work is mainly with Hathor, the Serpent Goddess. And the Serpent Goddess is a very ancient concept of duality, the feminine being this duality. And in ancient Egypt, it was Hathor Sekhmet, the caduceus, and these two serpents. So I've traced this back. That's the energy that I work with in my work. So I keep going back because this energy is pre-dynastic. And then later on, Isis kind of, when the sun god came up, then Isis became the most important deity. That's the one that most people have heard. But Hathor was really the sacred feminine, or the serpent goddess is the sacred feminine. So I sort of traced this back, and it seems that before we had the serpent goddess in ancient Egypt, this all traces back to the Dakinis, So this was so I've been researching this, trying to research this. It's not very easy to do when you're going back that far in time.
Right.
And again, speaking to other researchers from other fields, it seems that that's the path, that the Dakinis then kind of came in, and this concept of the serpent goddess, this duality, which is in all mythology. We have Enena and Ereshkigal. We have in all the mythologies the serpent goddess. And anyway, so I traced it back to the Dakinis, but that's as far as I got. So I'm very curious to hear what you have to say about this Dakini energy.
And so is that the Dakinis like in Tibet? In Tibet?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so what I know, and I mean for me, like being a tantrika as well, I mean it's so much about this deep remembrance of of myself, as I said, like as an instrument of the divine, recognizing that all is sacred. And the Dakini energy really is this remembrance of ourselves as divine and human. So this is something that I really connect with. And so the Dakini is a tantrika, essentially. She's a female deity of the Buddha. And, when Tantra came from India to Tibet, like that was that movement. And then the Dakinis are, these female forms of the Buddha that are very much about that transition also of into death. So they're they're there as the kind of guardians of any kind of big rite of passage, which I'm also very fascinated and deeply passionate about rites of passage. And that's even how I first birthed Danyasa. I thought that it was going to be a space to do rites of passage actually for young women. And then I quickly realized that it was not the right place and time. In my little beach town, I could get into a lot of trouble. And so that will come, and I recognize the work I am doing is rites of passage, because a lot of these women, like none of us really had a rite of passage. And so that is the deep work we're doing of just this passage, this remembrance of really remembering ourselves as divine and human. The Dakini also is here, like she's married to the divine. And she is also she's married to the divine, and she uses her body, her dance, her voice to awaken humanity. So she is an absolute service of the divine and, of this deep awakening. And for me, I feel like really, I shared in my story here of going to India, and, I shared with you before this, like I definitely am called to go to Egypt. I remember being in Egypt, and, I know that I've been here as a temple dancer many times, and Dakini and, temple priestess. And it's like this journey here has been like how to live as a modern day temple dancer now, and how to bring this through, and what are these frequencies, the frequency of the Dakini, the frequency of the temple body priestess. These are like the codes that are deeply woven within me, that through this work, through the temple body arts modalities and ways that I've been able to bring through all of these pieces, it's like this deep, deep remembrance. And so, I'm just really listening to how they want to come through, and really calling the women in that also feel this resonance. And there are so many of us, and we are so needed, because it is through this deep awakening and coming into our bodies and our dance and our voices and our gifts, that we can truly birth a new paradigm, through truly coming in and deeply remembering and then sharing our gifts out into the world. And so this is where the Dakini, comes through so strongly for me.
Well, ultimately, the Serpent Goddess is our DNA. It's the two strands of the DNA. So I think anything we do, dance, anything that's rhythmic, because vibration activates the DNA. And so it is literally in our DNA. It's just, how do we connect with that? And I think anything that uses vibration, which is what holistic medicine is, whether it's homeopathy or sound or dance, it's vibration. And Hathor was the goddess of vibration. So again, we go back to that. So I think, that's basically what we're trying to do. And I think that, going back to where we started, to find your true essence. Yes, your essence is in there. It's in your DNA. We only use 20%, and scientists call the rest junk DNA, but nature's not like that. Nature doesn't create junk. So there has to be something else in there. And I think that's our memory, our ancestral memory, and probably going directly back to the Dakinis, or who, back through time, so that it is actually in our DNA in a way we understand now, but not necessarily accessible. So I think we need these sacred arts in order to be able to access what is already inside of us. And again, that's what everybody's saying, but in the way I'm describing it, is a very practical way to look at it. And I think, what you're saying with these different practices, that the temple body arts are ways to tap in. It is in our body. It is a very physical thing as well as being an energetic thing. So we have to find
Absolutely.
ways to tap in. Yeah.
And especially for women, with wombs, or even if you don't have a physical womb anymore, you still have an energetic womb. But like, there's, within our wombs, is all of creation. It connects us to the cosmos and beyond. And so, it was really through my initiation of being pregnant and the miscarriage that I came into my womb in such a deeper way. And that is really so much of the deep work that I do within Temple Body Arts as well, of really mapping and understanding how we move through these different lunar archetypes as women in alignment with the moon, and how we can access these different gifts. And I think through really going deep into the womb and rewriting the old stories and clearing the womb is actually essential for us in really birthing ourselves and birthing what we're here to birth into the world. And so this deep womb work, just as you were speaking, Leslie, it's like feeling it in our DNA, but also just really like within the womb are the keys, really, also for us to really be able to unlock a lot of what is living within us and living within this chalice that is our bodies, and to really be able to access this magic and mystery within us, so that we can truly embody who we were born to be as divine and human.
Yes. Well, you just said something that's very important to me personally. So thank you for that message. I spoke about the alchemia remedies, the Egyptian flower remedies, and there's a navel activation that we do with the remedies. And I think you've just explained to me why that's so important. So
good.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yes.
So tell us now what you're doing. You've just started, you've kind of revamped. So tell us now what's happening, and up and coming events, and what's going on.
Yeah, well, for the Temple Body Arts Mystery School of Living Tantra and Sacred Sensuality, I am going to be starting it in October 10th. So I'm currently enrolling women that are called to dive into this deep, deep temple container. And it is a 6-month container. So coming in October and ending the end of April. We do have a month off over Christmas and New Year's, so that's good. And yeah, this is a deep journey. It's an intimate group that includes an 8-night initiation in Costa Rica at my Danyasa Eco Retreat. And then we have 3 calls a month to really dive into these deep themes and practices. And I have an entire curriculum, online. So there's videos and audios and a whole almost 300-page book. So there's just so much there. And this is really calling women that are feeling that deep call to remember why they came, to access, this, and bridge these 3 channels of the spiritual, the sexual, and the creative, so that they can really up level in their lives in all ways. So, this is calling in women who are already dancers or coaches or, tantrikas. I mean, yeah, this could really be anyone. I mean, I've had so many different women, though, from different walks of life, which is so beautiful. So it's really just listening and feeling, for those that are feeling the call to become a temple body artist also, which is really like this beautiful collective of women around the world that are here committed to living in devotion to, to the great life, to the divine creative spirit, and being of service and living with integrity and awakening and being initiated onto the path as a temple body priestess also, which, doesn't happen just over 6 months, but this is an initiation into this path and into, what is possible. So yeah, that's really the main offering I have happening right now. And so, yeah.
Find that on your website if
they can find that on my website. Yeah. Which is Sofiah Thom, which is spelled SOFIAHTHOM.com. So you can go there. And I also go live most Tuesdays. I do a little Temple Body Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific inside my Facebook group. So I have this Temple Body Sisterhood on Facebook with over 6,000 women from all around the world. So that's a really beautiful way to connect. And every new moon, we actually do a Temple Body Love Dance Challenge. And so women that have never danced in front of anyone, or don't even dance, actually, will start dancing, and they'll dance and share their dance. And it's just this beautiful way to celebrate and lift one another up and feel the power of the dance. So yeah, it's a really beautiful group. I feel very blessed to have this amazing group as well. So that's another beautiful way you can just tap into the teachings and the frequency of Temple Body Arts as well.
And you're on Facebook as Temple Body. So search.
Yeah, that's the group. Yeah. And then I'm Sofiah Thom, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. And I will say too, I do have just 3 spaces right now. I've opened up to work in my inner sanctum, which is my high level one-on-one program. So that's for women that are, really kind of at a high level in their lives and really wanting to deepen into their spiritual feminine embodiment. And that can include some VIP experience in Costa Rica, and then also support online. So yeah, you can just reach out and we can connect if that feels like a yes as well.
Excellent. So go to Sofiah's website, and I will put all the links for her website, Facebook, Instagram, all that will be in the show notes. So you can contact her through those. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your journey and your experiences with us. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, it was a beautiful conversation. And yeah, sending all of you tuning in so much love. Pura Vida vibes here from Costa Rica.
Yes. All right. Thank
Mm,
you. Thank you to the listeners. Bye
thank
bye.
you.
Bye.